Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. And today we are dueling two of my most beloved watches to see how they compare. Now, they are of dramatically different price ranges, which we'll discuss in just a moment. So in the red corner, we have the Seiko SARB033, which actually used to be mine, has since migrated into my wife's collection. Much loved, Japanese made. And then in the blue corner, did I say red corner? Yeah, in the blue corner, we have the Rolex Explorer. This is my own personal Rolex Explorer. This is the 114270. Oh, and by the way, I should mention, this is a Fluco, beautiful suede strap, very nice and subtle. Sorry, not subtle, supple. And yeah, this is handmade in Germany. Incredible straps. I have reviewed these straps, so if you want links and where to buy, I believe you can get these from Holbens. And then of course I have my Valor NATO strap for the Explorer, which you can get only on theurban.gentry.com. Now, you're probably wondering, well, I should have jeweled the Seiko Alpinist in comparison to the Rolex Explorer, because they are both mountaineering watches at heart. However, I feel that would have been a little bit on the nose, and also because the despite I love the Alpinist, and we have jeweled it and featured, I think, in 4 or 5 videos now. Well, that's another reason it's featured quite heavily. I really wanted to compare these two because I consider them the best everyday watches in their respective price ranges. And if you're not familiar with how the jewel works, there are 10 categories. We'll go through them, marked out of 10, and then the total score at the end. Now guys, do bear in mind, little disclaimer, please keep your own scores. These are just in my opinion. You can disagree entirely. That is one of the benefits of freedom in the free world we live in. So yeah, feel free to disagree and keep your own scores. And please do share them in the comments. I'd love to hear what you gave each watch, and it's part of the fun. It's just fun, guys. It's just fun. Now, before I completely and entirely forget, I'll do a very quick wristwatch check. That's the Squire 1521. Haven't worn it for donkeys because, well, obviously the Lion Shark, and I've been wearing my subby a lot. It's still ruddy cold here in New York, so I'm trying to get some of that summer vibes. But yeah, this definitely warms my heart. So let's commence. The first category is value. So I had to give it to the Seiko here, 10 out of 10. I think this is one of the best value watches in its price range. We're talking under $500. I consider this one of the best watches under $500, without a doubt. You get so much for your money. Cracking, reliable, solid performing movement, beautifully finished watch. Quality's there. Now, the SARB was released in 2008. And that's a good point. The Explorer, this particular one, is from 2001. And now we all know the Explorer got updated. I think when was it? 2010 or something like that. So we're comparing two watches of the same era. And as we go through all its features, you will understand just how much you are getting for the money. It's quite incredible. A massive step up from the entry level, and its price does not reflect that. They do fairly decently on the used market as well. They don't lose a ton of money. Also, it's important to note the servicing. For the Rolex, you're going to pay substantially more to maintain it, whereas the Seiko is extremely affordable. Let's discuss the Explorer. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. I scored this only a 7 because at the end of the day, this is just a 3-hander. Unfortunately, the gift and the curse of Rolexes is that, yes, it's a luxury brand. You're paying luxury prices for what is essentially a tool watch. I feel that there's something a little bit amiss there. You're paying a lot for the name on the brand. Don't get me wrong, the quality and everything is up there, but is it worth 10 times the price of the Seiko there? I honestly don't think so. I honestly don't think so. Do I get 10 times as much enjoyment? Probably not. Now, of course, this is entirely subjective. You can feel otherwise. But I've got to be honest. And also considering what you can get for around the $5,000 mark out there, you can get some insanely beautiful, complicated watches and a lot more value for your money. However, it still gets a respectable 7 because you get that instant Rolex tradability, and it does maintain its value very, very well. And at the end of the day, it is still a Rolex. It is still entirely in-house made. So let's move on to design. Design is slightly different from style. How good was it designed to serve its purpose? Now here, 9's all round. There's no doubt that the Seiko and the Explorer are beautifully designed watches. What is interesting about the SARB is that out of the gate, I mean, there was nothing that preceded it. It's the first 033 of its kind, and Seiko just knocked it out the park. Astonishing level of detail and refinement in this watch. It's designed, I guess, for its purpose as the versatile everyday watch that is reliable, and that's what it does to a T. And then we have the Explorer, which is an iconic design that has evolved over 60 years since its inception, made for reliability, legibility, and hence its very simple, ultra legible dial and layout. Both watches share a wonderful sense of proportion. Everything is positioned in relation to everything else perfectly. So they're both stainless steel watches, they're both automatics. With the Seiko, you even get a display back with the hard legs, and their size and scale is remarkably similar. The Seiko is about 38 millimeters, while the Rolex is 36, but their lug width is about the same. We're talking 44.5, and they even have the same height of just a smidgen over 11 millimeters. Their lug width is also the same, with 20 millimeters, which is great because, you know, it's compatible with basically all my favorite straps. They are also very classically designed. I feel that they will age marvelously well because they're quite restrained, they're quite conservatively considered and very carefully nuanced. Both monochromatic, which lends the longevity of its design, and they're tastefully done, definitely. I mean, real crowd pleasers. A lot of thought has gone into all the little details. If we look at the Seiko, functionally, that minute and seconds track, there's a high degree of precision in the reading of time here. We have a date, a very usable crown. With the Rolex, we have that iconic layout with the 369, wonderful balance and symmetry to it. That ultra legibility with the contrast of the markers and the numerals. The oyster case, of course, and the absence of a date in order to keep it simple, less chance of more things going wrong. So in essence, despite being a very basic Rolex, you have that rugged reliability that is the bedrock of the brand, really. Okay, let's move on to movement. Now, this is going to get really interesting now. In my opinion, well, there's no doubt that the Rolex wins here. The Rolex has the 3130, which is, of course, COSC certified. It has a 42-hour power reserve. It's hackable, 31 joules, operates at 28,800 vibrations an hour, has the Breguet hairspring, bidirectional winding. It's a real trooper, and they've even decorated it, which, yeah, it's a bit unnecessary, especially on a tool watch, but they've done that. It's also completely in-house manufactured. I adore this, the 3000 series of movements from Rolex. I've spoken very highly of them. I can only personally attest to how solid they are. They can really take a beating, and that's the fundamentals of what Rolex is about. You know, yes, they are a luxury brand, but at the end of the day, when it comes to making workhorse movements, they're very, you know, that's what they do best. The Seiko, on the other hand, gets a respectable 8. Inside we have the 6R15, which is a derivative of the 7S26. Being a descendant of the 7S26 also brings that inherent dependability, that tried and tested robustness. So it has, this time, the hacking and manual wind. The 6R15 came out in 2006. It has a very impressive 50-hour power reserve. It operates at a slower speed, 21,600 vibrations an hour. You don't get as smooth of a sweep as the Rolex. However, there's less friction on the moving parts. So it does boost its longevity in terms of the wear on these moving parts. It also has quick set and a date complication, so it's a 23 joule movement. The fact that Seiko are able to produce this at such a low price is astonishing, and it just goes to show the mastery of the Seiko brand. It's a rock solid movement. Unfortunately, you can get a lot of variation. You know, the Rolex is plus minus 2 seconds out of the factory, whereas this is unregulated. You can get all kinds of results. However, if you do regulate it, you can get it to perform admirably. I mean, you know, just as good as the Rolex. Also, you do get to see and enjoy the movement, which is fantastic, especially if you're just getting into this hobby. It's wonderful to hook you into the magic of a mechanical movement. It is a little bit utilitarian looking, but you can't expect high-end decoration at this price range. We do get a little bit of, I guess you could say, almost Geneva stripes on the rotor. Okay, let's move on to brand prestige and watch history. So Seiko gets an 8 again, very strong. Seiko's an incredible, legendary brand, founded in 1881 in Tokyo, so it's older than Rolex. They've revolutionized the watch industry many, many times. They have many firsts to their name. They're just as innovative as Rolex, undoubtedly. Rolex were founded a little bit later, in 1905, in London, actually. Now, of course, they are Swiss, and the watch is Swiss-made. It's also important to note that these two companies are similar in the way that they are entirely in-house manufacturers. Rolex is only luxury, whereas Seiko does the full range. Seiko is an impressive brand. The only reason I marked it, I didn't go higher with the marks, is because the watch history itself, the SARB line is still relatively new in the whole scheme of things, whereas the Rolex is the undoubted icon here. The original, well, it wasn't called Rolex Explorer just yet, but when Sir Edmund Hillary, he wore an Oyster Perpetual to his famous ascent of Mount Everest in 1953, that began a whole legacy, and that slowly evolved or inspired the name Explorer, which then appeared on the dial a little bit later on. I've done a whole video about the history of the Explorer. I do urge you to check that one out. You know, it's evolved wonderfully over the years. It's had 60 years of careful improvements and changes, and now it's 39 millimeters, and they've upgraded the movement, and they've added chromalite, and etc., different numerals, etc. I've also done a video comparing various versions. However, it is an icon. You've got that legendary Rolex brand, which is now an aspirational luxury status symbol as well. But in essence, this watch is probably the most honest Rolex. It doesn't have the stigma sometimes attached to their more kind of loud, flashy, slightly vulgar offerings. It's still very true to its roots, and I appreciate that. So it's an iconic watch, and you couldn't really ask for more. Okay, let's move down to quality. Well, the Rolex wins, but just by a smidgen here. With 9 out of 10. I think the polishing, they also use a different steel. The 904 gives it a little bit more of a luster. Also, their QC is top notch. Having said that, I've even seen brand new Rolex Submariners with misaligned rehautes. They're not infallible to QC issues. You get screwed links in the bracelet, oyster clasp. It's undoubtedly better. And at the end of the day, this sounds rather simplistic, but when you handle it and you compare it to other watches, it just feels like quality. It feels like class. When you wind the Rolex, it has that butter smooth action that compared to the slightly grainy feel of the Seiko. Sure, it's not the most scientific way to judge a watch movement, but it certainly is satisfying. Both watches have extremely crisp printed dials. They're just beautifully made watches. The Seiko still gets a respectable 8. It's remarkably well finished. The polishing, it's exquisite, really is exquisite. The different surfaces is very impressive for the money. It certainly looks a lot more expensive than it is, and I think that's what I remarked when I originally unboxed it all those years ago. Corners have been cut. You can't expect heaven and earth at this price range. The bracelet, if I bring it in here, you have pins instead of screwed links. You have hard legs on the back instead of sapphire. You do get sapphire glass on the front though, which is impressive again at this price range. Certainly better than the entry level, and the QC I have found is a little bit better. Okay, moving on next to style. Well, I think the Seiko wins here. There's a lot more effort that has gone into the detail. I think it's a more elegant watch. Stylistically, aesthetically, it's definitely a lot more interesting to look at. We have beautiful faceted markers, applied Seiko logo on the dial. That stunning seconds hand. It's kind of like a needle, like a sewing needle, and then those dolphin hands. Very, very elegant. Also the stepped case, the transitions in polishing. They've even signed the crown very nicely. The way it plays with the light in terms of all the different surfaces. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful watch to look at. And that ink black color to the dial also is quite alluring. They refer to it sometimes as the baby Grand Seiko, just obviously without the prestigious movement and high level of polishing, although this one is impressive. It's a beautiful, stunning piece. I mean, it always impressed me just how elegant it was. It's certainly a refined piece for its price range. In terms of the effort that's gone into its looks, it's a subtle one as well. It doesn't scream at you. It has a refined elegance that is quite understated, but yet there are details there that you appreciate over time. The Rolex, on the other hand, it's still a gorgeous watch, although it was not designed to be pretty. It was designed to be legible and accurate and rugged. It's essentially still a tool watch. I like its no-nonsense minimalism. There's nothing superfluous about it. That very same quality can sometimes be to its detriment. However, it does have that lovely symmetry to the dial, a nice sense of balance and clean look to it, uncluttered by the date. The applied numerals of the Explorer also play with the light quite nicely. So I think a respectable 8 there. Let's move on to versatility. Again, the Seiko wins here. I think it's one of the most versatile watches out there. A little bit more versatile, in my opinion, than the Explorer because it just works with so many straps. It still has a little bit of that sporty DNA in it, so you can still put it on a NATO if you really want to. Even a rubber strap, I've seen them on, work perfectly fine with them. But because of its more elegant look, it's a little bit more dressy. You can dress it up, dress it down. Whereas the slightly more utilitarian tool watch aesthetic of the Explorer, it doesn't work on all straps. I've found with certain glossy crocodile straps that really work with Seiko, it doesn't always work with the Explorer. So slight edge there to the Seiko. And another thing I must point out, what I truly believe boosts the Seiko's versatility is the fact that its power reserve is so long, 50 hours. You can wear it all, Monday to Friday, take it off on the weekend, wear something else, pick it up on Monday, and it's still going. And just easier to wear. It's a very easy wearing watch. They both score very highly here. If you just had to have one watch, they would both be strong contenders. You can jump in a pool and take it on a holiday just as much as you can go into a boardroom with more formal attire. They suit every situation, and I think that's why they get such high marks. Having that monochromatic color scheme and that classic aesthetic is always going to make a watch more of a strap monster, more compatible with a greater variety of straps. Let's move on to performance. So, there's no doubt that the Explorer wins here. It has the superior lume. The seconds hand also has lume, which the Seiko doesn't. The giant triangle at 12 gives you better orientation, and the Mercedes hands enable you to differentiate between hours and minutes far easier in low light and with the luminescence. The Seiko performs admirably. It has its own strengths. We've mentioned the power reserve. It also has a higher anti-magnetic resistance. In terms of how they wear, they're both extremely similar. Now, despite the slightly larger 38mm diameter of the Seiko, which I think is more of a crowd pleaser, they have the same weight, quite interestingly. It's about 65 grams on a strap or a NATO strap or whatever, and then they're both 130 grams on their bracelets. The whole purpose of a watch is to keep time, and you can't beat a COSC certified chronometer, so the edge obviously goes to Rolex. Okay, let's move on to durability. Well, the Rolex is a solid 9. Inside, they use the KIF shock protection system, whereas the Seiko use DearShock. Now, I couldn't find concrete evidence which one protects the balance better. Both do a remarkable job, although the KIF is used by a lot more higher end manufacturers like or watchmakers, I should say, like Patek, like Vacheron, etc. So I'm guessing it's a little bit more expensive to do, and it's just, you know, that's what the Swiss use, and that's what the Japanese use. The Rolex uses 904L steel, while the Seiko uses 316. So 904L steel, while being a little bit more expensive, it's more corrosive resistant. They are both 100 meters water resistant. The Rolex has the screw-down crown and the oyster case, while the Seiko doesn't have a screw-down crown. Personally, I prefer screw-down crown. There's just something reassuring about it. However, the 3130 has been going for longer, since 2001, so it's a more proven movement and has a reputation of being consistently rugged. They both have sapphire glass, so they're similar in that regard. Okay, let's move on to the last category, which is X Factor, that inexplicable quality that just, you know, that feeling it gives you, that special something that we just can't put our finger on. Well, in my opinion, the Seiko lags a little bit here. It's not an icon. It's not immediately apparent just how special this watch is. It takes a while for you to really appreciate all the finesse and careful consideration that's gone into its design and styling. You're always going to forever have that stigma of, oh, it's just a Seiko. I feel it's a slow release X Factor. It could also be seen as perhaps a little too conservative. I always think less is more. In comparison, the Rolex, you know, some of my idols like Ian Fleming has been seen wearing a Rolex Explorer. It has that special something. It has the allure of an iconic watch. Cool pop stars like Brian Ferry, and not only Brian Ferry, but even respected haute horology watchmakers like Roger Smith. His choice of everyday watch is the Rolex Explorer. So it's just, that really does mean something. It has that special quality. Let's also not forget that the Explorer has inspired imitation, cementing its truly iconic status. And nothing is as flattering. The only reason I'm not giving it 10 out of 10 is because it's quite a subtle, again, very similar to the Seiko. It's quite subtle. It takes a while for you to really appreciate the watch. In my youth, I always disregarded the Explorer as a little bit boring. You know, I didn't really understand its significance and its history, but, you know, since then, my tastes have changed, as we all do, and it has that special thing, has that X Factor, certainly. So what are the final scores? Let's have a look at the final scores. So it's no surprise the Explorer wins there with a strong 89, although, you know, lagging only a little bit behind is the 033. And for a moment there, I got to say, I thought it was actually going to overtake. But it's difficult. You're up against the heavyweight, really. Is it really worth the extra money? I guess that's the ultimate question. Worthy discussion to have. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Also, what scores you gave each watch. Where do you feel the strengths and weaknesses of each watch lie? I'd love to hear your feedback on that. It's difficult comparing two watches of such dramatic price differences. But at the end of the day, they're just wonderful, and I think you could be proud to wear either of them. They're just, yeah, they're cracking pieces. Two favorites forever. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and found it useful. And as always, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Okay, ciao.